Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Celebrating Cinema. The whole gang is back. What's up, everybody?
What's up?
What's up? Elliot is also here, but sadly he's not attached to any microphone, so I'll be doing the official welcoming. Welcome to another episode of Celebrating Cinema. I'm Hugo, and I'm joined as always, by the Michael is Elliot, but also by
Kiriko.
hey,
Hi.
Kiriko. And
Hey, welcome back, Kiriko.
Hi,
And I'm
thank
Tom.
you.
Hello.
Yay, hey, Tom. Tom has a cold open for us today, so why don't you just get ahead and,
All
kick
right.
things off?
Somewhere in my early high school years, my classmates and I were instructed by our French teacher to read Antoine de Saint-Exupéry's sweet little novella, Le Petit Prince. For those unfamiliar to the book, the story follows a young prince who visits various planets in space, including Earth, and addresses themes of loneliness, friendship, love, and loss. On this interplanetary adventure, he encounters a geographer who, after some insisting, tells him the definition of the French word éphémère, or as the English would say, ephemeral. It means, says the geographer, that which is in danger of speedy disappearance. We would call it fleeting. Ever since reading these passages at an early age, éphémère has remained my favorite word in the French vocabulary. It's certainly a term that comes to mind when discussing the Renaissance woman and idiosyncratic chameleon we will be talking about today, Tilda Swinton. The London-born actress returns in Joanna Hogg's once again highly autobiographical sequel to her 2019 film The Souvenir as the mother of protagonist Julie, a struggling student filmmaker. Hogg's shimmering story of first love, mostly depicted in part 1, is a portrait of the artist that transcends the halting particulars of everyday life, a singular mix of memoir and fantasy. In it, Swinton plays a woman some years her senior, once again transforming into a character she is not, but surely seems to know quite well. That Julie is portrayed by her real-life daughter, Honor Swinton Byrne, certainly helps. What is it with Tilda Swinton? She has, to stay with the French vernacular, a certain je ne sais quoi. An ungraspable aura that lends itself to an almost bizarre variety of roles and performances. From her early works with friend and fellow artist Derek Jarman, Caravaggio, Wittgenstein and The Amazing Blue, to collaborations with Sally Potter, Orlando, Spike Jonze, Adaptation, the Coen Brothers, Burn After Reading, David Fincher, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, Luca Guadagnino, Io Sono l'amore, Beer Splash, Suspiria, Wes Anderson, His Kingdom, Bong Joon-ho, Snowpiercer, Lynn Ramsey, We Need to Talk About Kevin, Apichatpong Weerasattakul, Memoria, the list goes on. Summing up her CV, one would think her focus lies mainly in the artistic, but let's not forget she popped up in both the Narnia and Marvel universes. Few actors can navigate the balance between high and lowbrow, between light and heavy Hollywood and art house, without ever being pigeonholed, as well as Swinton has been doing for almost 50 years. So the question arises, what makes her so unique? What makes her stand out? And why, like the rose the little prince desperately wants to protect in the Saint-Exupéry's novel, does she seem so éphémère?
Wow.
That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. It's a lot of questions as well at the end.
Yeah. Do you want us to answer this question?
Well,
Why is she so ephemeral?
yeah.
So, one thing that I read about her is that basically her family line traces back to a Scottish family that has been existing since the Middle Ages. So basically, her family line can be traced back to, a long ass time ago, which, is not very common.
She's the original Highlander. There can only be one.
There can be only one.
But you can see that in her face, I think, or at least she carries a certain type of history in what she expresses and how she carries herself.
She's certainly distinguished in everything that she
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Even when she gets casted in those mainstream films like Narnia or in some Marvel movies, she often plays royalty or this kind of like supreme empress or like the witch queen. Like, there is something. There's something.
Ephemeral?
I'm looking for this French word.
Éphémère, wow.
Éphémère. It seems like she comes from, she's cinema royalty, right? But it seems to be reflected in real life as well. And it's fun, actually, that in the mainstream film, she's casted that way as well, because she can definitely pull it off
Yeah.
more convincingly than maybe some other people that are cast in those kind of like king and emperor and queen and empress roles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherworldly.
Otherworldly.
Maybe it's
Scotland
a bit of that.
is kind of otherworldly, maybe. But maybe to answer the question, we should get to like our initial encounters with Tilda Swinton, because you went through a list of credits quite deftly, and it's incredible, like the amount of major directors that she worked with. And I'm wondering, like, what's the first time that you actually noticed her? You know, that you're like actually kind of like in awe of her screen presence. Because now we all know her and we all love her, and it's easy to take for granted that she has this like incredible reputation and fantastic screen presence. But there used to be a time that she had to work for that reputation as well, I guess. What's like early Tilda Swinton memories?
For me, it's her role in a film that I didn't actually mention in the cold open. And it's Michael Clayton.
I'm Michael Clayton.
You're late. This is a $3 billion class action lawsuit. The architect of our defense has been arrested for running naked through a parking lot.
He's building a case against you, North.
Nobody's gonna let him do that.
Let him? Who the hell's gonna stop him?
I spent 12% of my life defending the reputation of a deadly weed killer.
Arthur.
No, wait!
They killed Michael.
You North needs to know he's under control. They've been shook up. They need to be reassured.
What are you telling me?
That I'm counting on you.
I didn't want to say exactly what it was, just that it was something that would win the whole case.
I'm not the enemy.
Then who are you?
A movie by, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Dan Gilroy, the guy
I
who
love that
also.
film. That's with,
it's a wonderful film with
yeah,
George Clooney.
It's one of the better George Clooney films,
Yeah,
I would say.
and she plays a incredibly difficult, harsh businesswoman, which she can also do.
Yeah.
It's a very different role than she plays in. Well, she's kind of a nasty woman in Burn After Reading as well. But yeah, that's the first time I actually thought, like, wait, who is this? And there she doesn't really have some sort of magical quality to her. That makes any sense.
Yeah.
She has that sometimes in films that are not like fantastical or something. This is very sort of based in reality.
Yeah. The first movie I probably have seen with her in a leading role must have been the Caravaggio film, which was one of her earliest roles as well. 'Cause I saw that in history class in high school. However, I don't have a very strong recollection of her. I think like around the same time or like a bit later. Now it's definitely later, like chronologically wise, but around the same time I saw Narnia for the first time, and there she definitely made a bigger impression on me because that was just a easier film as a young person to grasp it. So yeah, I think Narnia must have been my first film where I was like, whoa, she is really something in that movie. It's not a great series, the Narnia film series. But
I
she
have
definitely
never seen any Narnia movie.
they're fucking
That
weird.
was
actually,
completely
they're
like-
just like also the weird in maybe the sense that they're not weird enough that you wish they would be weirded, but then just like something constantly a little bit off, you know.
Yeah.
But
I
she
agree.
definitely
But
brings
is
it
it
home.
like Lord of the Rings light?
Yeah,
It always felt
yeah,
like that for me,
100%.
with
Yeah.
bad effects.
Everybody who's like comparing it to Lord of the Rings, I always made so much fun of them. Like, they like Narnia just as much as Lord of the Rings. That's very strange. But she's great in that film. How about you, Kiriko?
I think for me it would also definitely be Narnia, but she didn't necessarily leave that much of an impression on me as did the film. But I think before my love of cinema, I was way more as a child into fashion. And I think one of my first impressions of her was there was a show by the Dutch designers Frickel and Rolf.
Oh, yeah.
Where they did an homage to Tilda Swinton as the muse of their collection, where every single one of the models was a lookalike of some sorts of Tilda Swinton.
And I presume that the models were both male and female as well then, right?
I
Or
don't.
was
I
it
think
only
they were all
women?
women.
Oh, because that's a
Yeah.
shame. Because
Yeah,
you know,
I agree. Yeah.
you know, one of the most interesting features of her as an actress as well is her
For
androgyny.
sure. Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
I think like the only real equivalent that you would have in the world of cinema, but then also extended to the realm of like pop culture and music and fashion would be David Bowie.
I believe I might be of service.
In how much like a chameleon they can be and just kind of like shift between
Yeah.
shapes and features and also
I think she also
genders
compares
and
herself to David Bowie.
a lot.
Yeah. But then, yeah, so I think she came to me first as a sort of culture icon and after that as an actress, which, you know, she is also in a lot of ways.
Yeah, she also seems really deeply connected to not only Victor and Rolf, but also always got a bit jealous about this story, but one of my good friends, he was the boyfriend of Iris van Herpen, also like
Hot.
well, one of the best fashion designers in Holland. And he would always tell me that he would celebrate Christmas with Iris at Tilda's and her husband's castle in Scotland.
Isn't that funny how she's so connected to Dutch fashion design?
Yeah, well, maybe that's something we do greatly.
Well, it's maybe something that we do wrong. Like, why is she not on the pod then? If she's so connected.
Why
in
is
the
this a
Netherlands?
podcast about film? This should be a podcast about fashion.
She should just be a guest if she's so connected in the Netherlands. What the hell?
Like a 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon separation to her. Why is she not on this pod? Elliot, how are you? This is the reason why you don't have a mic, right?
Give him a mic!
To justify yourself.
Yes.
Hashtag bring Tilda in.
Yeah. Okay, so but those are the early memories. But what's maybe the films where you're like, well, you already mentioned Michael Clayton, but what were the films where you're like, yeah, this is like an absolutely fantastic actress, a true artist, maybe.
I think that really dropped for me with We Need to Talk About Kevin, I guess.
Same.
He's a sweet little boy. That's what boys do.
What next, Mumsy?
You just can't get uncomfortable enough, can you?
Uncomfortable? With my own mother?
So, how's school going?
On my course schedule?
Isn't that a weird thing to collect?
I don't like STEM.
That movie was so intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, and after that, I really started noticing her more, and her roles also became more
Tilda focused,
but also she was the main protagonist in films. Then.
And also in that film, she really proves to be everything that her face is not. Let's say so. This whole idea of her ephemeral appearance and this historical lineage that she's always presenting, and the Empress, etc. Now she's just the regular American mom.
She goes from porcelain to clay there.
Wow.
Boom. I'm out. Mic drop.
Wow.
That's funny that you mentioned that, because in the Souvenir Part 1 and 2, she's also just kind of like this very average British mom, right? She's just kind of like... she's a bit rich.
Wealthy.
Yeah, wealthy.
Yeah.
I have not got that much room.
You've got a foot on that side.
That's
and I
not
literally
a foot.
am on a ledge. And I've got nowhere left to go.
Do you think she suspects that you creeped down to our bed?
No.
I thought we'd put Anthony down the end. It's not that kind of relationship anyway, is it?
If she does, that was an amazing performance. Very special, Julie.
I don't think I am.
Oh no, you don't think you will.
Very normal, really.
You're not normal at all.
I feel as though I want to not live my whole life in this very privileged part of the world I come from. I want to be really aware about what's going on around me. Sorry.
We can all be sincere, but what's it all for?
I haven't seen it, so
yeah,
talk
you
to
haven't seen it,
Souvenir
but
with
like
me.
the best scenes in the film arguably are the ones where Tilda just kind of comes into the apartment of her daughter, who's played, like Tom said, by her real life daughter, and she's actually the protagonist. But whenever she comes in, it already like brings this kind of like different energy onto the set, and she comes in like with plastic bags, groceries, and she's got kind of like this very synthetic jacket on, and it's like maybe raining outside and windy, and she's like very tired and coming over the stairs and just like very exhausted, and the dog is there, and she's like, oh dear, how are you? Let's put us tea on, and she's like, just my awful British woman impression, but she's like a British mum, just like a very, very like, yeah, she is wealthy, but also just very normal, very banal, very ordinary. And in the second part, actually, of like the Souvenir Part 2, you see kind of a bit more of their privilege, and it's very smart how the film kind of like...
Wait, hold on. We have to explain to Kiriko and
Explain
maybe
the
to
film
some
to
listeners.
me.
So The Souvenir is a film made by Joanna Hogg, and it was released in 2019, as I said in the cold open. And it's super autobiographical film about young filmmakers' relationship with a he seems very much more a class up from her.
A very charming, elusive man.
Yeah, and
with a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah, and he sort of drifts into her life and out of her life. And, well, we should spoil it because otherwise we can't talk about the second one. He has a drug addiction, which he doesn't actually really show. So he's I think, addicted to heroin.
Yeah.
And it's also very unclear if he's really working for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, yes or not. And
he
it's
has
like
a lot of very rich stories, but it's very uncertain what he actually does with all of his time because you never really see it.
Right.
Because everything is from the perspective of this young woman who is training to become an artist as well. And yeah, many of those things are based on Joanna Hogg's life.
Yeah.
I interviewed her in the year that film came out, and it was very interesting because Hogg eventually became, I think, one of the most important film directors from UK around this time. She's certainly, I would say, for me at least, the most esteemed UK director working right now. Many of the films that she made, like Archipelago and Exhibition, are absolutely fantastic. It was a crying shame that none of those films ever found their way to a Dutch cinema. It's like almost criminal that people have slept on their movie so much. But it's very interesting to see that with The Souvenir, people are finally catching on. And it's also very ironic in the sense that they're catching on in a moment where she is reflecting so much on her own troubled past as a person in a very vulnerable position that gets in a very fraught relationship as well. There's so many layers to it about like, you know, the position of a woman in the arts as well, also in a relationship, the times in which it is made. I mean, she is a film student in the 1980s, which is around the time when film schools are finally really becoming a thing in the UK. Before that, you basically went to art college, but not to film school, right? So there's also this kind of like rigid structure in those early film schools that don't fit with the artistic project that she has in mind. So it's also like an unlikely person in that time to graduate from that film school. All of it is kind of there. And then it's also about class, about privilege, so many things.
The scenes of like this sort of big group of old white men smoking cigarettes and talking about the script that she wants to film are hilarious and toe-curling at the same time. That's kind of the first movie. And then the second one, and let me say, I didn't really like nor dislike the first film.
I loved the first one. I was blown away.
But I get annoyed quickly when something that does seem interesting is situated in a sort of social class context that I firmly despise.
How do you mean? What do you despise about it?
I don't like the sort of old money, upper class British thing that's going on there. It takes me out of it because then I start thinking about why are we looking at this?
But that's for me is genius because like...
Wait. Can you please let me explain it?
Yeah.
Because there's another film that you also like, which I don't like, and it's Knight of Cups, where it's like you're having this fucking penthouse, shut up about your monologue interior about you cannot relate to Natalie Portman. I just don't give a shit anymore that you have a swimming pool outside. And that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But then with part 2, it completely made sense for me because she does way more with the sort of outset that she had in the first film. And it's a beautiful sequel, actually. I've actually thought that the first film became better due to the second movie because she starts analyzing these class structures more. And the fact that the guy has died due to a drug overdose is a good starting point for maybe a story more about her and not the sort of toxic situation she was in.
It's very funny that The Souvenir Part 2 is kind of about her also taking revenge on the lost time that she had, that was spilled, that was taken away from her in the first part because of her relationship, but also because of her like hindered almost artistic development. And then in the second one is much more joyful and much more like artistically kind of like invigorating film in which she's finally able to find the words and the images for the things that she have been experiencing in her life.
So what happens in part 2?
She makes her graduation movie, and it's like there's not a lot of things happening, but it's like her maturing.
Richard Ayoade is happening.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's fantastic because that's like there's so many links with like UK filmmaking in the 80s around that time. Like that character is very much inspired by Julian Temple, who we've recently also interviewed about that time and about like he was like a very punkish director who made a very, very ambitious musical film that was like a throwback to 1950s kind of like American musicals on these kind of backstages in Hollywood, right?
Cute.
And it was very much with the music of the time, but then kind of like Coppola later would also do with Rumblefish, kind of like this reference to that 1950s kind of like aesthetic.
Oh, yeah.
So he makes that film and it's like a major flop. And he's also kind of like this very punkish, very like druggy guy. But anyway, so she's meeting all of these interesting characters and she's also becoming an artist in her own right. And that's kind of like the journey that she's on. You feel the momentum, the artistic momentum there. And also, you know, in that film, Swinton really catches on. We're talking a long time about the film itself. We already like kind of indicated that Tilda in the film has this interesting position because indeed she comes from the old money, but she also grounds the film in a way that this person is in a very vulnerable position, but she is a caring mother, so she's kind of like the reality check of her often.
Mhm.
And she does that very well because she doesn't really often have that really grounded role. Often she is, as we discussed, has this kind of like elevated position in the film. So that is quite interesting to see. And I think that she does that very handsomely. And to bring it back to Swinton, I think that's also one of her defining features is that, like Tom said, she can't be pigeonholed. You can't define her by a single role because she can be the elevated, elegiac, or like kind of, you know, ephemeral figure, but then she can also be this very realistic, grounded old lady, and she can be a very, you know, feminine kind of like appearance, but then she can also have that very androgynous, near masculine kind of like side of her that she's also not afraid to show. She can play a younger version of herself. She can play as like in, what is it, the Grand Budapest Hotel, almost decrepit,
Right.
like very old
Yeah,
version
yeah.
of herself.
I'm not leaving.
I beg your pardon?
I'm not leaving.
Why not?
I'm frightened.
Of what?
I fear this may be the last time we ever see each other.
Why on earth would that be the case?
Well, I can't put it into words, but I feel it.
Well, for goodness sake, there's no reason for you to leave us if you'd rather...
Come with me.
To fucking Lutz?
Please.
Give me your hand. You've nothing to fear. You're always anxious before you travel. I admit you appear to be suffering a more acute attack on this occasion, but truly and honestly, oh dear God, what have you done to your fingernails?
I beg your pardon.
This diabolical varnish, the colour is completely wrong.
Oh, really? Don't you like it?
It's not that I don't like it. I am physically repulsed.
Has she ever been a hot version of herself?
That's a good question, actually. Where is she the hottest?
How is she not hot in films?
I don't know. No, I wouldn't say that she's always portrayed as the attractive hot
Oh,
woman.
God, maybe not in the sort of shabby form of hot. I mean, I think
Are
she's
you
very
too morally
shabby form
pure
of
for
hot?
like for just like?
What about the non-shabby hot form of hot?
I'd rather have
no,
shabby
but
hot
what do you
than,
mean
like,
by hot? I mean, I think she's attractive.
Well, okay. I don't.
Oh, okay.
Okay. But I think one of the reasons why she's the great actress that she is that she falls out of line of bazillions of other actresses who are, you know, very, very hot and also good actresses, where she is.
Yeah, okay. She doesn't conform to some.
She conforms to medieval hot. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, she conforms to like pre-Renaissance art where somebody's neck is way too long.
Exactly.
Yeah. She's
And
kind
they-
of like one of the figures in a Hieronymus Bosch painting. It's like somewhere in the
100%.
corner of a painting doing
Yeah.
something weird,
Yeah.
as she does in Suspiria or something.
Yeah.
I was born in the wrong time, in the wrong body.
So no hot Tilda?
A bigger splash?
Yeah.
No, it might not come back. Have you thought about that? It's your fucking life. Your voice is your fucking life. no doubt you'll just reinvent yourself again, won't you? Is wearing your mother's clothes that reinvention? I don't think so. Anyway, I suppose you'll have your mummy phase and I'll have my daddy phase. But one way or another, we're just going to grow old together, aren't we?
I'm happy, Harry. Can you stand that?
Not a huge fan of Guadagnino, but
I wanted to say something, but apparently it's not controversial at all, that I would say that most, if not all, Guadagnino films low-key kind of suck.
Yeah, I agree.
I saw Bigger
Fully
Splash and I
agree.
was like incredibly bored. I was like, if this is the standard for like contemporary erotic cinema,
That's the
then
thing. They're all
I'm
not
like-
hot. They're
then-
trying to be hot, but his films are not hot.
yeah, he really wants to be somebody that knows about those things, but he just has no idea how to really get it across, for me at least. I
Yeah.
just read zero in it. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing there for me.
Luca Guadagnino does this thing that I find super annoying, where he shows you only the things that happen around something that is important. And the funny thing is, this actually links very nicely to Joanna Hogg, because she also does that. She doesn't necessarily shows you the moment of conflict. She shows you like sort of the moments that surround that conflict.
Yeah.
With Joanna Hogg, that feels vibey, and with Luca Guadagnino, that just feels plodding for
It's
me.
exactly,
And
yeah, you're totally
for some
right.
people,
Yeah.
apparently, that is emotion.
Yeah.
But I am way too sentimental to not sometimes have
Yeah.
a small nugget of somebody just pointing me in a direction and letting me feel what the filmmaker wants me to feel, instead of it just being these random sort of scenes following
Yeah, I
each
agree.
other. The weird thing with Bigger Splash is that there are like moments in that which are nice. Like Ray Fiennes dancing in that film is one of the best scenes I've seen that year, but it doesn't necessarily link to anything else that's happening in that film. And the same with Suspiria. It's like there are, even though it has nothing to do with the original, apart from, but there are beautiful moments in there, and it just doesn't cohere in any sort of way.
The thing is that Guadagnino just makes a fake-ass pastiche of like better European cinema from the 20th century. No, Bigger Splash is just gentrified La Piscine. And Suspiria,
Yeah,
well, I mean,
Suspiria.
yes. They Call Me By Your Name is kind of like the worst James Ivory film you've ever seen.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's just Maurice
Yeah.
with peaches.
It's just like Maurice, but let's make it more explicit for the people in the back, right? Whereas Hogg, what she does, I mean, she explicitly references in this film 80s UK film culture. However, that is already an interesting and underexplored territory of film history, I would say. Plus, it doesn't do that kind of like, it's like in the old days, but we're going to try to make it more better or contemporary. It's like, it's more personal. It's kind of like lived in.
It's
is literally
super-
her
it's
lived
super
experience.
personal.
So it's so textural. It's like so much straight from the heart. It's very analytic as well. You don't like that maybe that she comes from the old money, the Swinton family, especially in the first movie. I love that because it immediately adds this kind of like layer of like, okay, well, all of this is only possible because of that. So it already puts all of the things in perspective in a way that no one else would maybe make. Many people would maybe hide that idea, but it's also an integral part of art. Where does the money come from? Often not from the institutions, often not from the government or this like beneficial sponsor. It just comes plainly from your parents, you know? There's many directors working right now that can only have that job because they come from a wealthy family. You would be surprised how many directors that are in the main competition in Cannes were already filthy rich before they even started picking up the camera. It is insane. So I think she also acknowledges that, and I'm grateful for that because that's a conversation that should also be made more often. So yes, Hogg is like the real thing, you know, and Guadagnino for me is like one of the biggest fakers around. Like, I fucking hate his movies.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
There's also a nice musical difference between Guadagnino and Joanna Hogg, because okay, I'm not gonna completely bitch on Call Me By Your Name because there are parts of that film that I actually like.
Fuck that film.
But that Sufjan Stevens soundtrack is completely unbearable. So something you should know, Kiriko, about Joanna Hogg This
Yes.
I wanted to make this my letterbox review actually of the Souvenir Part 2, but I don't really write any reviews. I just rate movies. Follow me on Letterboxd, people. And
And then drop the ad. What's the account name? Come on,
it's
man.
Tom Waist, Waist.
Okay.
Anyway, the review was going to be, I loved it, but somebody should tell Joanna Hogg how to fade out a track. Because she doesn't do that at all. So just, you're looking at a scene and you have this super 80s well-known track that you almost want to sing to playing. And then she just cuts it off at the end of the scene.
Sounds like fun.
That. Yeah, I think that's good.
Because she does it consistently, it becomes this thing where you're waiting for it to suddenly end. And almost like, yay, she did it again.
I want to talk about another film, and I want to also kind of position this idea that often when we talk about, film, we perceive film, as we did just now as well, from the perspective of the director, right? They are the auteur of the film. However, I would say that there's a couple of actors and actresses that could be seen as the co-author or maybe the dueling author that instill meaning in the work that you're seeing. One of them might be also from Europe, might be Isabelle Huppert, one of the few people maybe that can rival the stature of the director and maybe instill more meaning in the film because she's in it. A person from the US that I'm thinking of might be in a totally different register, Nicolas Cage. You can think a lot of his performances, but nonetheless, the film would literally not be the same without him. There's not a single exception there. So you could say that often, in a sense, he instills the meaning in the work itself because of the casting. Another person that you could think is of course, Tilda Swinton. One of the films that I'm then thinking of is a very recent one, Memoria by Apichat Pomwira-Satekun, which is literally that film I think could only work with Tilda Swinton in the lead.
It's like a rumble from the core of the earth. Bam! And then it shrinks.
For the people that don't know Apichat Pomwira-Satekun, he is a Thai film director known now really for what we call slow cinema, where it is a very meditative, very patient form of filmmaking, where you really try to get to maybe a deeper, almost like mystical or like spiritual meaning of something in life. Often his films take place in the Thai jungle, small communities, deal with stories of spirits and ghosts and ancestors and all of those things, often associated with sleep and the proximity between life and death, all of these themes. And his new film, Memoria, his first real big international feature, which takes place mostly in Colombia, stars Tilda Swinton in a role where she traverses the country looking for the mysterious source of a banging sound that she hears in her head. We could replicate it by banging really hard on the table here. But she hears a sound in her head. It's like a really harsh thump. And she doesn't know where it comes from. And she goes on this kind of like very low-key quest to find out where that is taking her, And she, for me, is also really the co-author of the movie. Because many of the things that you see, it's just like her walking through Bodoga, her going into the jungle in Colombia, her waiting, her witnessing things, talking with people. But it's by her virtue of her face and the way she walks and the way she perceives things that meaning gets made almost and generated in the film. So I wanted to just like posit this idea, and I'm curious if you've seen Memoria and what you thought of it, but also what you think of this idea that maybe Tilda Swinton increasingly became much more the author of her own movies than the directors were that she worked with.
Memoria reminded me of one of my favorite scenes in one of my favorite movies, which is L'Éclisse by Antonioni.
Yeah.
And it's Monica Vitti walking on the street. It's late at night.
It's spot on. Yeah.
And she passes this array of flag posts without flags on them. And they're just waving in the wind. And she just sort of walks around that place. And there's like this super ennui vibe she has, which of course the entire trilogy that he made with L'Avventura and Il Deserto Rosso as well, and La Notte are like this. It's all about the bourgeois ennui that people have no idea what they are doing. They're sort of boring through life. And all the films that she is in by Antonioni, don't think they would work without her.
Yeah. Which is also why you made that program with Antonioni films, but with the focus on Viti instead of Antonioni.
Which is to be seen in cinemas right now.
Yeah, not anymore. It just ended.
But it was a great program for everybody that missed it. Shame on you twice. But it's like, it's exactly the same point, because you take one of the greatest, masters of 20th century filmmaking, Michelangelo Antonioni, and you flip it around and say, wait, let's put the focus on Viti, because there's something very important there that can maybe be taken for granted.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that what we're almost talking about was something that I got a bit of flack for here internally, was in a press text I called her his muse. And it seems that word has become, I would say, I don't know. It's a bit too old school.
The woke post Me Too era.
No. Through cinema, there are so many relationships. Godard and Carina, like Pierrot Le Fou, there are like so many films where they are working very intensely. All those films wouldn't have been the same without them pairing up. Yeah. Same thing goes with Lynch and Dern, for instance.
But you could also add like Verhoeven and Schwarzenegger, as in like...
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Sure. Those are like... Schwarzenegger is such a fantastic himbo, like, and Verhoeven knows what to do with that. So it's like, you could also like make it masculine.
To bring it back to Swinton, she does seem to be that for a lot of people. She does seem to be a muse for many directors, because she does return in many films for many the same filmmakers. Yeah. There are like 3 Wes Andersons. There are like 3 Guadagninos. There are like 3 Jim Jarmusch films where she's in.
Yeah.
Maybe also because she is, just like Viti, a very interesting canvas while being on the canvas. There is a lot to project on as well. Apart from her own sort of unique presence, she also brings something that's easy to project your own feelings as a viewer upon, I think.
What do you think of this idea?
I think your analysis is spot on. But then I think what makes Swinton so iconic compared to, like, she does indeed have this Viti quality where you just can't stop looking at someone's face. But whereas where I am looking at Monica Vitti and just constantly repeating in my head, damn, she's so beautiful, I can't stop watching her.
She is hot.
Yeah, she is so hot. And that is, I mean, 90% of the reason why I can look at her for hours and hours is because she is so hot. And I would say for, as I said earlier, Tilda Swinton, for me, that is not the case. Mm-hmm. But then maybe she has become what's a more of a sophisticated definition of what a muse can be, where when I'm looking at Monica, I look at beauty. And when I'm looking at Swinton, I really have the idea that I'm looking at some sort of history in her face, which is, I think, a reasonable and also acceptable way of using the word muse.
That's a fantastic bridge to the like absolutely unforgettable scene in Memoria where she gets closer to, you know, the source of the things that she had been hearing, and she has this chance encounter with a person deep inside a Colombian jungle, a man that seems to be an incarnation of a person that she already met before and had disappeared, and she finds a different version of him in the jungle, and he's a guy who's sitting in the jungle, and it's like straight out of like a magic realist book, who is confined to a single space because everywhere where he goes, he can not only see what is right in front of him, but he can perceive the history of the place in its entirety, which is so overwhelming for the human brain that he's basically stuck in a singular place. The whole idea of the film is that she is a receiver. She receives this hidden information that is captured in layers of the earth, the history of the earth. And this man is the transmitter. And this scene starts, a long take, almost 10 minutes maybe or something, where they hold hands, or they kind of like attach their hands on each other's arms, and he transmits all of this kind of like information of that specific part on Earth, and she receives it. So they're just sitting in a room, and sound like kind of like slowly swells up, and they're holding these kind of like hands, and she has to kind of act as if the entire history of that place, since the conception of that place, is channeling through her body and bringing her back into time, layers and layers and layers and layers into the earth. And It's an absolutely incredible scene where, without overacting or making it too sentimental or anything, you just kind of see the weight of that, the impact of that on her. And when the tears actually eventually flow, they're not the easy ones, but they are the hard-earned ones. And I interviewed Apichatpon about this scene as well, and he said that it was incredible because it is also, again, about the relationship between the director and the actors, because behind the camera, he was whispering things to her like, you're now feeling this, and you're now seeing this, and you're now thinking of this, and now this is kind of like the image that is flashing into your head, and then this and that. And it just kind of like stacked up all of these impressions and ideas, and that got that shot made, right? So they make that shot. It's like a one take, very long shot. They shot it like 3 times or something, and then the third time they shot on film as well. It's just literally kind of like the last bit of reel went through the camera, just was kind of like shot up. So they had to can it. It was just that take had to be it. And everybody on set apparently was crying, mostly also because of the performance of Tilda. And then she got up, totally snapped out of her role. She had a camera with her herself. And apparently, outside of the little hut where they were filming it, a mama pig, like in Gunda, had given birth to like little piglets.
What?
And she was like, oh, the pig has given birth to piglets. And then she started filming the pig and making photos of it. And she was just immediately out of it, like filming a pig, while everybody on set was just crying. And it was just like, it was a fantastic story. And I feel like it's very anecdotal, but it did get me closer to also this question that you posed at the beginning of the episode, right? Like, what is it about like the je ne sais quoi of Swinton that she can be in the most intense moment of her career? I would say that it's like a career-defining performance in Memoria. And she can just immediately snap out of it and be in the moment, witness life as it is happening in front of her eyes and be there as well. Well, that is for me kind of like the sign of a great artist. Yeah.
Mic drop.
Okay, so going forward, what we'd like to see Tilda do in the future. Actually, I'm going to start because I was looking at the IMDb, and she's going to do something that I want to see her do. She's going to make another film with David Fincher. And it's based on a script by the guy who wrote Seven.
Mank 2.
Oh.
Mank 2.
Mankening.
Mank 2. Twice as long as the first film. Do you have a lot of dishes? Do you want to do the dishes? We've got you settled. Mank 2.
Anyway, so my boy David Fincher, known from movies such as Mank. No, he's making a film about an assassin.
An assassin begins to psychologically crack as he develops a conscience, even as his clients continue to demand his skills.
Wow.
This summer, Michael Fassbender is the killer.
Okay, so that's actually what it's called. She's in that. I want to see that now.
That sounds good.
Yes.
I have a pitch. I can
Ooh,
like if there are some like studio people listening,
Hit it, boy.
I have an idea for you. Well, we recently had a episode on one of the GOATs as well, David Cronenberg, and I was thinking about Swinton's androgyny as well, and I was thinking, how about a film in which Swinton, she's in a Cronenberg film, she can procreate herself, but she gives birth like in Men, but then infinitely better because that film fucking stinks. She gives birth to a version of herself, but it's not a different person. It's just a new iteration of herself. So the film is called Birth, Rebirth. It's by David Cronenberg. And it's this infinite loop where, you know, when we give birth to people, it's not a different person, but it's just a new level, a new layer of ourselves. And that's maybe something to explore.
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Can I add then that those procreations of her do have a different character from herself?
Yeah, okay, sure. Why
so
not?
then it's almost meta from her own body of work.
It becomes a reflection on Judith Butler, you know? It's like, just like, you know, there's just so many different versions of yourself one can perform in society. And one must perform in society. It's a statement on that as well.
There's a book that is exactly this story.
Well, send it to Cronenberg.
Will do.
Yeah,
I will. He's my homie, you know, so I have not a suggestion of what role she can play, but actually a suggestion that has already been made in history. And as, you know, the woman that transmits history throughout her being, I read that she was originally casted as the Bridget Jones So I thought, what a film that could have been if Tilda Swinton would have been Bridget Jones.
What? That's like a hinge point. That's like a alternate dimension.
Exactly.
Wow. That really blows my mind.
Unimaginable, no?
Yeah.
Literally unimaginable.
Well, that sounds like a great place to end it. That sounds like a wrap. Thank you so much for listening. As we talked mostly about the Souvenir Part 2, it's playing in Dutch cinemas. Well, we're recording quite soon, so hopefully also still when this episode gets aired. We'll be having a short summer break and we'll be back for obviously a new season. But in the meantime, we will throw in some, let's say, one-off quicker episodes so we still have you on the hook. We're looking forward to welcoming you again to Celebrate in Cinema, and we wish you all a great summer with lots of fantastic movies. Yay!
Bye-bye!
Bye!
It's like the time that I read about that the first choice for... This makes no sense, by the way, so we can delete this, but this reminds me of the first choice for Gandalf was Sean Connery.
Gandalf? There can only be one.
They send him the script. And they said, like, Mr. Connery, why haven't you responded yet? Aren't you interested?
I've read it. I don't understand it. Elves, what are those?
Just had no fucking idea what he was reading. Like, what is this with this fantasy crap? But then The Lord of the Rings came out with Ian McKellen, and he was like, I desperately need to get in. And then he made The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen out of spite, and that ended his career.
Wow. I actually low-key kind of love The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
It's not as terrible. It is like a train wreck, funny train wreck.
It's like a cute train wreck. That's kind of like a great Movie Max DVD rental, That was kind of like...
It's funny because Tilda Swinton is actually in the movie Trainwreck.